If you don't have a practice, like a formational practice in your life, call it spiritual, which is what I would say. It's a spiritual practice, which is to consider your whole life meaningful. If you don't have one, well, then Amazon will have one on your behalf, or Fox or CNN or Apple. Like you are being shaped. Like you don't get a decision there. You are being shaped by forces in the world. You either harness that in some sort of liturgical way where you practice things that form your life direction, directionally in the way you want to go, or someone else will do it for you. There is no neutral when it comes to meaning in life. There's no neutral when it comes to humanity. You're being formed. That's part of what it means to be human.
What's up, Damn Givers? Welcome to the Let's Give a Damn podcast. I'm your host, Nick Lapara, and as always, we're bringing you the stories of people who saw something wrong in the world and gave a damn about it. Every once in a while, we bring on a guest or two that can help us, teach us, guide us, and it's not so much about the organization that they've built or the project they've started. Today is one of those days, and it's a good one. Not to say that these friends haven't built amazing stuff in their lives, but we have stuff to learn from them today, and I'm so glad that they're here to help us, to teach us, to guide us. My guests today are Scott Erickson and Justin McRoberts. Scott, you may remember from a few weeks ago. If you haven't listened to that episode, push pause now, go listen to that one, and then come back. Trust me. And as a reminder, Scott is an artist, speaker, and storyteller from Portland, Oregon, and my very good buddy. I love him. And my other guest is the incredible Justin McRoberts. Justin is a pastor and a storyteller, and a musician, and a podcast host, and so much more. He has been a pastor at the same church that he helped start in Martinez, California, for 21 years. Friends, if you're not in the church, spiritual, religious world, that is rare. Know that that is rare, and I love that he has stayed in one place for so very long that it's very hard to find. He has put out 18 musical projects over the last 20 years, and he is the host of the At Sea podcast. Today, I brought Justin and Scott on to talk, among other things, about their brand new book that is out today, September 24, called May It Be So. Whether you're religious or not, whether you're spiritual or not, this conversation is for you. Trust me. So much goodness to wade through in our conversation today, and I know that you'll be helped and encouraged. Are you ready? Let's do it. Here's my conversation with Scott Erickson and Justin McRoberts. Scott and Justin, thank you so much for joining me on the Let's Give a Damn podcast today. Y'all are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. And Justin, we already know that Scott is joining us from his minivan.
Yes.
in Vancouver, Washington. Where are you joining us from? Because I made the dumbass mistake a few minutes ago of assuming you're from Portland. And
Yes.
you said, no, I'm not. You're in
I'm not.
California.
No, I don't have the tattoos for Portland. I live in Martinez, California, which is just outside of like Oakland and San Francisco.
Gotcha.
That's where I'm in my garage. That's where I am.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, today's, for everyone listening, today's conversation is going to be a lot more focused on spirituality, Christian spirituality to be specific, but don't let that turn you off, whether you're a spiritual leaning person or not. We're going to all learn a lot today. People that need or want to change themselves, their family, their neighborhood, city, state, country, world need this conversation. We all need this conversation. So hang in there. There'll be some new ideas that you're presented with, some new language maybe, but we're going to do our best to explain some of that and hopefully provide, a meaningful conversation for everyone. So Scott and Justin, let me begin by saying to you both, and Justin, we've never met before. Scott, we've met many times. We know each other pretty well. I appreciate you both so very much. Your verbal art, Justin, and your visual art, Scott, mean the world to me, and I know it means the world to so many. So thank you ahead of our conversation for who you are and what you give to the world.
Wow, I feel like that might be like a good place to stop. Like we could let's put it downstairs.
I'm not letting you off the hook that easy.
Okay.
I'm not letting you off the hook that easy. So before we talk about your books, because that's primarily why I wanted to get us together in these virtual rooms here today. Let's get to know you a little bit. Scott, you go first. People know if they listen to every episode of this podcast, which I don't assume that many do. They know you from a few weeks ago. We had a lengthy, amazing conversation about your Say Yes show. But give us all a recap of who you are, what you're about, and then we'll go on to Justin.
Yeah, I'm a professional artist who lives in a van down by the river. And that's just what I'm doing right now. No, I make my living as a creative. So that I tell people, because that seems like a mystery to people. They're like, "Oh, cool. How do you make money?" And I say, "I don't know." But I do lots of things to make a little something. So I am an illustrator, painter. I am a co-author with Justin, and I do performance art, speaking, and these kind of like one-man shows. And that is what fills my time. I think of it. I actually heard the comedian Dimitri Martin frame it this way, which is really helpful because he does a lot of he writes and does cartoons and little short films, and somebody was like, do you get a lot of crap for doing so many things? And he's like, yeah, but he's like, for me, I'm just trying to make the joke what it needs to be. And sometimes it needs to be a short film. Sometimes it needs to be just a one-liner or a drawing. And that made a lot of sense to me of what's the idea that I'm trying to get to and what's the best way to do that. And that's kind of my pursuit of being a translator and a facilitator of these deep conversations that we're in.
And did you or did you not play a really impressive venue playing? You performed your show at a really amazing venue the other night.
Yeah. Joe. Speaking of Joe Rogan, he was performing next door. I was at the Hollywood Improv in one of their side labs.
And was that a true story that he walked in and was like, "What the hell's going on here?" or something like that?
Yeah. So what happened is that night, the pipes in the venue burst. So the bathrooms are closed for an hour and a half, and the kitchen closed down. So everything got started late, and I had a show right after mine, and mine runs a good 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So it kind of threw. Here's the thing. It was an awesome experience. I loved it, but it wasn't my favorite show ever. I was at the week earlier, I was at this kind of vibey church chapel in Denver, and that was super fun. This I think it kind of took the legs out from it a bit. And, but yeah, he walked in and was just kind of he's like, "What is this?" And my friends were like, "Shh."
Yes.
So he just kind of stood there for a while. Because I'm telling jokes, but I'm also talking about deep things. I got a lot of visuals. Yeah, and there's so lots of stuff going on. Anyways, it was a really rad experience. I hope it leads to other avenues like that. But yeah, it was super fun.
That's amazing. Justin, your turn. Please tell us everything about who you are. Well, maybe not everything. We have a 45, 50-minute time limit here.
Yeah.
But tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where do you come from? Who are your people? What do you do?
Sure. So my wife and I live in Martinez, California. We've got 2 kids, a 9-year-old, 2-year-old. Planted a church in 98 in downtown Concord. I'm still one of the pastors there. I write books. I did music for a long time, traveled mostly playing music. And now when I travel, I mostly talk. I've got a podcast called the At Sea podcast with me, Justin McRoberts. And this prayer book that we're going to talk a little bit about today, that is called May It Be So, is the second project I did with Scott. I've known Scott for going on 7 years or so, 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, whatever that was. And so that's kind of the kick of it. I coach artists and pastors too. It's a newer thing in the last year and a half. I sit down with folks who are trying to figure their shit out in the arts or ministry and help do that kind of thing. So I'm kind of all over the board.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because this is a very weird thing for, I think, a lot of people, even for people that are in the Christian and church worlds. You've been with the same church since 1998.
Yeah. Well, I planted it, so I feel like at the point at which they boot me, then I'll leave then. But
still, that's over 20 years. That's pretty impressive, because you're you look like a dashing, handsome young man when I
Not
look at
right now.
your photos.
Okay.
But 21 years, that's wild. Tell me about spiritually shepherding the same church family. That's kind of language that we use a lot of times. The same church family for over 2 decades.
So I mean, this is going to be more cliche than I want it to be, but it is besides being a father, it is vocationally because vocation has to do with who you are, not just your job. It is vocationally the most difficult, heartbreaking, and rewarding, enriching thing in my life. Period. There are no, my kids are 9 and 2, so we'll see what happens once they get into their teens. But there are no wounds in my life anywhere close to the depth and like darkness of the wounds that I've experienced as a pastor. Not even close.
Explain a little bit about that, because we see even just the other day, for some of us a friend, for a lot of people just a name that they saw, but now hear about a story. Another pastor, Jared Wilson, died by suicide, and we know that he has been an amazing advocate for mental health within the church. That conversation, and then ultimately he succumbed to it himself, and super sad. Those couple days were pretty hard. He was an amazing, encouraging, just wonderful human. But this happens, more and more. And so, like, what are those pressures? You're talking in really, pretty intense terms here for people that aren't in the clergy realm. For a lot of people that aren't that involved in church life. Like, what does that look like? What kind of pressures are you under?
Yeah, well, I would push back just a smidge and say, like, I actually think. I don't think there's the actual patterns are new. I think it's like anything else. Like there's more noise now, so we hear more. Like there's more present. Everything's on the surface. Not everything. More is on the surface. And Scott and I have had this conversation a lot about, like, we've had a lot of relationships with different clergy type people and over the years, and like there are cats out there have been burying the same shit for decades, but now it's a kind of a conversation, so we can kind of get into it. And the pressures are, I mean. So on one hand, like if you're doing your job right, you take it to some degree personally, like it's got to matter to you. But that line, like from the pastoral standpoint, if you're on staff in a church and you actually love people, which is why you show up, the line between like loving people and being helpful and being useful versus it being way too entwined in the lives of too many people whose stuff you can't carry and being known like that, it's super messy and super confusing, and there are so few bits of training around not just how to do it well, but more to the point, like how to get right if you don't. So there's a lot of setup about like, hey, so power differential in relationships, that if you're a pastor in a community, you're never just some guy at the party, you're the pastor. And so like I show up at a party last night, and I know as I'm there, like as soon as there are conversations, I'm like, oh, that's Justin's, Keiko's pastor. Well, now there's like the angle is different on me. So there's all this training set up for power differential and kind of stuff. But like when the ball hits the floor and relationships break and I fail in some form of relationship, or I cross a line, whatever, like there are so few models and bits of training for what to do when you fuck it up, that like that's where the darkness starts to set in. It's like, oh, I missed my mark, and now I don't know what's up. So the real pressure for the real pressure for pastors is like there's so little coming back from blowing it. That's kind of the main pressure. Like if you blow it, usually you're just either done or you have to hide it.
I too have held the role of clergy for several years throughout my career, and it's hard. It's really fucking hard, and I wouldn't wish it on most people, because the weight that you're feeling all the time for the people that you are caring for, loving, talking through really hard stuff with, so on and so forth, is really intense. Scott, what's your this is probably a much longer conversation, but package it up nice and neatly for us. Like, what's your relationship with the church in the past and presently? Like, where are you with all of this?
My relationship with church. Yeah, I grew up in the church, so it was kind of, the religious practices have always been a part of my life. There have been many moments from junior high school, pre-college, in college, after college, where I had to go, what is this thing? And why are we doing these things? And I still do. I believe in what the church is. I don't necessarily love what it's been made to look like in America. Like I say yes, I'm like, there's a lot of fluff that can go away as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the two things that keep me coming back is, one, there's some part of the divine that we cannot know without each other. And so it is the practice of being together. And in that, because there's no evidence for God, like you can't, I mean, meaning like you can't go to like Mount Rainier and there God is, like it is what is revealed in the sacred texts of Scripture. Is when you are in the midst of loving and caring for somebody else, God is there too. So it's like Richard Rohr says, spiritual truths can't be known by observation, but by participation. And so like the importance of being together is because it's in the actual participation that we are experiencing an aspect of the divine that we cannot just on our own. There's other aspects like we can through solitude, silence, through nature, all those things. But there's a really poignant one about being together. And then I think the church, what it is, and this doesn't happen very much, but it is the thing that says when we come together, we're all equal. And it is a practice of that equality in the best form.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do, especially if you have celebrities or wealthy people or just anybody who has power, and then a group that has no power coming together. That's where this practice is like, can be culture altering, is because it has the audacity to say like, we're all image bearers. We must, and then through these relationships and these rituals and practices that we form friendships. And we can see at least what was recorded in the book of Acts, that when those two are seemingly different sizes or, like bank accounts or wealth or something, it looked like people caring for one another and sharing their resources and this kind of, which a lot of American Christians call biblical socialism. I don't know. Whatever, however they're afraid of it. I've brought it up to pastors and you mean like communism, socialism? I'm like, I don't know, just looking what people did, impelled by the Spirit of God. So that interests me and that keeps me going. There's a lot. I just preached in my church yesterday and I actually wrote like a call and response, and we've never done that before. So I had to kind of preface it. And I love saying this, like, everything's invented. We don't have to do anything. If what was spiritually forming was a slip and slide, then we would be handing out towels and Speedos when you came into the door.
That's amazing.
But we are part of a long history of women and men who know when you get together and you sing songs, it does something to you. When somebody gets together and somebody shares a bit of their life and expounds on an idea, that does something to us. When we give and we share and we go, what's going on in our community? So this is what has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, and we're just partaking in that. But we need to contextually make sense of it instead of going, well, we did this and we always do this, because that needs to change the way we talk about it, the way we sing about it, the way we, and then with like technology and other things, it's like, hey, we can show images, we can do lots of different things, So anyways, that's always in play. I think mostly what people, I think there's a lot of reasons why people like get rid of their faith. I think mostly they get rid of their bad images, but frankly, a lot of like the rituals and ceremonies we call church are just like boring, and people are like, I just want to go. I'd rather go worship at the table of brunch, which is a delightful experience. So I've worked on staff and been a leader. I don't know if I've ever been formally called a pastor. That might be something I've pushed back on. I would say if I brought in spiritual vocabulary, my gifting and calling is more, that's great.
There's these two homes being built right across the street from my house.
Yeah.
And they frequently block the driveway, block the street, but they're putting
Yeah.
down sod right now, and there's no cones, there's no anything. And anyway, that was a fire truck that did not like being blocked off, so he let my neighbor know. Anyway,
That
sorry
is
about that.
amazing. That is amazing. Oh, I was just gonna say I'm my probably leaning is more prophetic, which means a lot of things, but that is Justin, pastoral is more like I want to invest in people for 10 years. Mine is I need to have a rootedness in a community, but the rhythm of my life has often been being sent somewhere else to rustle things up, say
Yep.
some things, remind people who they are and what we're doing, and then come back home. So that seems to be more of my rhythm in life.
Yeah, I think you, maybe Justin, I don't know you that well. I know you, Scott, and I are very similar in that regard. Apostles, the word, the apostles is a Bible word, but it's a Bible title. But they start things and they build up, and then prophets tear things down. We, like you said, very nicely, rustle things up, kind of shake things up. Yep. But I've spent a lot of my life, in sometimes poorly and sometimes well, tearing bad ideas, structures down, and giving people an alternative conversation to have. And Scott, I know that you do that well with your art and with your honesty and everything about you. So that's really cool. So I want to spend the bulk of our remaining time, talking about your brand new forthcoming book out on September 24, which is the day this podcast will release.
Oh, cool.
So if you're listening to this and you don't pause it right now to go to Amazon and order that shit, do that. But before we get to May It Be So, I also had the honor of, combing through, reading, praying through your book, Prayer. The first one that you two did together, which is, 40 Days of Practice. How did that, because I think that was probably you two, Justin and Scott, figuring out how to work together and kind of putting out this project out into the world, which again preceded this new book, May It Be So. How was that experience? What did you all learn from authoring a book together? And what has the book done for you and for the people that have read and looked at it?
Yeah. So one thing is, I mean, the initial effort to make a book, as opposed to, because the prayers initially started they were just word prayers on Twitter and Facebook, and that has a particular cultural resonance. There's a particular cultural power available online. Things move fast. There's this kind of galvanizing, rooted experience with a book. And so, putting a book out of prayers that were a little outside, I don't want to say outside the box, I don't know, outside normal experience for people who pray or people who didn't pray and quit on prayer or whatever. Making it a book has this it has more of a gravity to it, which was sort of our assumption, was like, well, this is cool. This idea here is neat. And these words and these images will probably play differently for people. But if we're going to do it in a way that's going to have the kind of cultural impact we want it to have, this should probably be a book, because a book just says something different. I don't have my head all the way around what that is and why that is that works for people. I'm sure some of it's psychosomatic in terms of having something physical in your hand, which is fine too. But that's one of the things we learned is I get the primary thing in that direction was making it a book as opposed to just leaving this long list of blogs or setting something up at Medium does what we were hoping it would do. Is it gives people a sense of oh, this is actually real. This is a real thing I get to do. The other part of it, and Scott can pick this up more and he's more articulate in this direction, is folks just clicked with it in a way we suspected people would. We specifically suspected that there are a number of folks, a lot of people for whom prayer as an idea was more than fine, but the particulars of prayer, the way it had been expressed, the way it had been put on them, the way it had been they just didn't fit. They're like Scott was saying, everything's made up, but the way we talk about the way prayer is often talked about from up front in particular religious settings, it's it sounds like it's not made up. It sounds like this is the thing, this is the way. And we really found for folks, there are just a shit ton of people, especially the first book came through and like, I quit on my prayer life, or I never used to be able to pray, or like I didn't feel like it was for me, and this makes me feel like I was for me. So we were like that assumption that like there were folks who mostly didn't pray, not because they didn't think it was all real, or they didn't think divine things were interesting, but like they just hadn't figured out like they hadn't found the freedom to experiment, and this kind of kicked that door open for a lot of folks.
Yeah, so these books are essentially, both of them, Prayer and May It Be So. On one page, you're going to see an image that you, Scott, created, and they're all beautiful. And I've always loved, even before we met years ago, like I just loved your stuff because it's you make something so simple that speaks volumes, right? And they're just always incredibly helpful. Your Instagram account is one of my favorites to revisit because I know I'm going to get encouraged. And so this is literally a book with an image on one side and a short prayer on the other side. Take us into the mindset of, let's talk about liturgy. Let's talk about, guided meditations, prayers. Why is this important for humans to participate in having well, the thing about liturgy is liturgy means the work of the people. And everyone has, I think, whether you have a faith bent or not, everyone has a liturgy. Everyone is following a pattern in life. Everyone has these rhythms and these habits that they live out each and every day. Most people, I think, have a very poor, unhealthy, unhelpful liturgy. That's me. I think that. Because everybody, we all have these things that we do each and every day, things that we value, and we show what we value in life by these things, whether it could be a bad liturgy, like don't take care of yourself, eat poorly, watch Netflix every night. But it's a liturgy. That's a liturgy because we follow this pattern, right? And I see the work of Let's Give a Damn, actually, again, this is a spiritual word, but I think it has implications for all of life. I see my work at Let's Give a Damn as helping people get a healthy, others-centered, others-focused liturgy going on in their lives, right? So talk through liturgy, guided meditations, prayers. Why is this important for? And as you give your answers, Justin, if you want to go first, then Scott, or vice versa, it doesn't matter. Why is it important for even people, like what does someone that doesn't have a faith bent here today, or someone that doesn't share your Christian faith, why should this be important to them? Why should they buy this book and participate in the rhythms that you guys have set forth?
Yeah, so I would pitch it this way. I don't know if you run into David Dark much at all in Nashville, but one of my favorite books of David Dark's is a book called "Life's Too Short to Pretend You're Not Religious."
We have a forthcoming podcast conversation. We've been trying to nail each other down for a few months now. But yes, love David Dark.
He's a gift, and what the book does, even just the title is worth it. Like, life's too short to pretend you're not religious. I think that's true. I think, and insofar as like when you use the word liturgy, the work of the people, what Scott and I assume with the book and with most of our work is like there is stuff already happening. Like if there's if the whole thing about the divine is true at all, then it's not predicated on my stirring of the divine. Like the divine is at work in movement around in my life, my garage, my family, etc. So that's stuff that's just flat out happening. And the importance of liturgy then is like it's not, and how should I say this? It's kind of like, what are you going to do it? So if life is too short to pretend you're not religious, this is actually an inclination in you that life is bigger than you. There are things that are meaningful in ways that you can't get your head around. And that meaning, if you follow it, kind of taps into some kind of divine underpinning. And you're right. Like, I don't need you to buy my particular brand of Christianity. But the question ends up being, what do you do with it? And I wonder if part of the hang up for a lot of folks is that the other side of that question isn't open-ended enough most of the time, that there's a right answer to that question. What are you going to do with it? That there's there are actually two options and a billion ways to get it wrong. And I think that's bullshit. I think the question, like, what are you going to do with your sense of meaning and depth and connectedness to the universe and everyone around you? That's actually some stuff you get to decide. And the importance of liturgy has less to do with getting it right and more to do with tapping into the way you actually want to live and what you actually see, and like establishing your own vision and connecting this with other people. That's the importance of liturgy, is like, this is shit that's actually going on in the world. This is what's actually going on in you. If you pay attention closely, you can hear it and feel it and feel connected to it. And now, what do you do with it? What does the work of your life look like in connection to that meaning? I think that's the importance of liturgy.
That's beautiful. Scott, do you have anything to add? Particularly, why, I guess what I'm wondering from you is, why is it important that a book like this contain not just words, which is, for so long, books like this with prayers have been around for thousands of years, right? This is not new.
Yeah.
Why is it important to attach really meaningful images that help bring those words to life? Why is that important?
Yeah, I love that how you frame things with the liturgy, because like my latest one-man show, Say Yes, a liturgy of not giving up on yourself,
Yes.
is almost predicated on the premise that you have a liturgy of giving up on yourself, that you started a practice or a ritual of saying things to yourself, interacting with. If we just went through my 3 points in my talk, it's like you have narratives that you say over and over and over again.
Yes.
You are participating in a culture of comparison, and that's devastating your value in the world. And then you have decided that like not trying or would be better than trying. Like this dream actually isn't ever. It's going to die, and that's actually the end of all things. And so like, Say Yes is like, let's develop a different liturgy, a different practice. We need practices in our lives. And as a person who, I have a lot of emotions, I have had bouts of deep depression and still wrestle with those lows, and just a general melancholiness of existing. I have to have practices and rituals that go, my brain and my body's telling me a narrative that is made up. It's all made up.
Yeah.
So like, that's not necessarily true. I can actually have other rituals and practices that tell me actually there's a different narrative going on. Like when I come home from a trip, always like the first day I'm really tired. The second day I'm really tired. The third day I'm low. And I know that day, like I don't hang out by myself. I try to have a good meal. I go swim laps or go on a walk. Like I get out of my head and I get into my body, because my head is just like, I've just got a shitty narrative to tell you about yourself. I don't make any decisions about myself. I don't make any career decisions on that day. I have learned that I need, you could say, practices, rhythms. I need a liturgy of centering in, like, it's going to be okay. This is normal to feel this way. So I think that was really great how you said, like, in a sense, prayer is giving form to the conversation we're having with our existence. It is a way of giving a framework that when we engage in becomes forming to us. So it's not that we say in the book, we're like, what prayer is the ever-present, ongoing, interior conversation with the divine. This is happening to you, whether you're a person of quote unquote faith or an atheist or whatever. You're having an internal conversation about what you think living is. And that is expressed towards just your general existence, or you could say the giver of your existence is what we would describe the divine as. And it is really important to know that, because that honesty is the doorway to hearing the voice of God. So how do we uncover that? There's lots of things. So we give like these sentences, and Justin's done a really good job on taking language, because a lot of prayer books are very wordy. And it was like, what if we could just make it like a nice scalpel that just gets to the point? And so he's done that with these like one sentence prayers. And then images. My running premise is that, and I have lots to validate that, but is like, our words are actually rooted in imagery. Our language is to try to explain to another human being what we're seeing internally, externally, and that's how we're communicating. And so a lot of times when we use words, certain words, especially religious words, we actually really are unclear of what the image is for that. And so we can have a lot of language and stuff, but people will be like, I don't, when people are like, do you believe Jesus is the way? When I'm like, yeah, what do you think the way means? Usually what they mean is, do you think Jesus is like the kindest spiritual bouncer you've ever met?
Right.
Like holding you from the kingdom club, and you got to go through him.
Yeah.
Or I would be like, is he about, when you say the way, do you imagine a bouncer, or is it a practice? Is it a rhythm? Is it a path? What do you mean by the way? Is it this like way of just being in the world that Jesus modeled so well? Which I think it is. So really getting to that rooted image. So we wanted to like give both of that, verbal language and image language, to that conversation. Found out, not surprisingly, but we just like happenstance that actually what happens neurologically is you start to like you're using both sides of your brain when you do that.
Yeah.
Instead of just like language is just kind of hitting your left side, images hitting more of your right side. So when you bring both of them together, you're creating this kind of dual brain, holistic brain experience, which actually has been verified by some like doctors and neuroscientists, like that this is actually how we have depthful spiritual experiences. So I think that wasn't anything we planned, just kind of what we were led to do.
Totally.
And I think why it's been really working in people is because there was this aspect of their experience, which, like I'll tell a story. Like, I remember the only time I've been to Hawaii, it was like 1998. I went with my parents. My brother and I were like teenagers, or I was in college. And like, I remember just every night, everybody would walk down to the beach, watch the sunset. And as soon as it went down, people just like left. And I was like, what is this ritual? There was like this ritual that was going on. Why? There wasn't any words out in the sky. It wasn't anything being told what we were experiencing. We just wanted to see and experience light go below the horizon line. Right. And so there was this, like, and I think we've had lots of those experiences about what we're seeing is forming us. And that is, I think, why the image is important, is there's an aspect that images can be forming to us.
I would only add this, when we go back to the whole idea that life's too short to pretend you're not religious, the idea that it's stuff that's happening. Maybe the other way to say this for folks are like, then you have to kind of believe that there's some sort of like weird, like substrata or like God's in the clouds kind of thing. And here's maybe the other way to say it would be this: like, if you don't have a practice, like a formational practice in your life, you call it spiritual, which is what I would say. It's a spiritual practice, which is to consider your whole life meaningful. If you don't have one, well, then Amazon will have one on your behalf, or Fox 100%. Or CNN or Apple. Like, you are being shaped. Like, you don't get a decision there. You are being shaped by forces in the world. You either harness that in some sort of liturgical way where you practice things that form your life directionally in the way you want to go, or someone else will do it for you. There is no neutral when it comes to meaning in life. There's no neutral when it comes to humanity. You're being formed. That's part of what it means to be human. So that's part of what like when Dark writes about life's too short to pretend this isn't happening. That's kind of what's happening. The music you listen to, the news you watch, the shit you buy and use, like, all of this is forming you in a particular way. So until you intentionalize that and then take some sort of hold of it, then you're just being formed by other entities that don't care about you the way you should.
Yeah.
This is pure gold, you guys. That's why you guys get paid the big bucks. This is super, super good.
When does that start happening?
Right. When does that? It's coming. Just
Does somebody have that check?
Yeah, and can I add on top of that, since we're getting to it, because we actually made this book because we have friends who come from a tradition, and we have friends who don't come from any tradition, but are like, I feel inclined to pray. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with that. And what we found is, like, and our premise for the books are like, we don't pray because we're religious. Religion can help with the framework and stuff, but that's not the essence of why we pray. It's a human experience. So we're actually asking people to be like fully human.
Yes.
That this is like something that will depthen your experience in the world. And I think what comes along is people like, do I have to believe all these things that I don't believe in? And we're like, no, you don't have to believe in what the spiritual realm is or whatever. I'd actually say it helped me to really define what spiritual and religion would mean. Because I think, again, we use these words without really a definition. I just think spirituality is when you take what's invisible and make it visible.
Yes.
So, like, we all understand that, like, thinking about soul care, like, I'm in this physical body, which is pretty fantastic still at 42. But there's like there's like but that's not who I am. There's like the deep part of me that's really hard to put a finger on.
Yep.
We would call that our soul or our spirit. So even though it's unseen, to engage in spiritual activity is to acknowledge that there is a part of me that's unseen that I still need to care for and unseen, and then
Yep.
so spirituality is the practice and rhythms and those things which care for that, which look like traditionally like silence, solitude, maybe even like journaling, whatever, even exercise. These are, even though my physical body needs to exercise, that ties into this like depthful, soulful care. And then religion is just like the rhythms and practices and rituals we create around that, making in what's invisible visible. So those simple definitions have helped me a lot. Because when people start throwing like, I don't like religion, I'm like, great, you don't like the
Join the
rhythms and practices. Yeah, and power got involved, and mortgages and salaries and egos. I get it. Like, yeah, no, none of us really like that stuff. But what kind of religion are you a part of? Like, and I think David Dunn's getting to is like, you're already a part of a religion.
Yep.
Whether it's the religion of brunch or the religion of like always putting down other people who found something, like it's just, yeah, we're all creating some kind of rhythms and practices.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, each prayer, let's talk words for a minute, English language. Each prayer begins with the word may. Typically, I think, as I've read through them, it's typically may I, but there's some variance there. But they all start with may. What's going on there in terms of that word and how that frames the conversation? Because you could say other things. You could say, I hope, or I want, or let these things come to pass. Like, what's going on with that word, may I?
Yeah, it taps back into the assumption and the hope and the belief that there is a particular direction, will, a loving will that surrounds, undergirds, begins and ends life. And what I would rather do with my prayer life is tap into that than try to manipulate it. So may it be with me, as you say, is the prayer of Mary. So, and Mary as like an archetype for me of faith, who hears this announcement in the biblical story of, hey, you're pregnant. You're 15. You're pregnant. You're going to give birth to the Messiah. Have a good day. This is the message she gets, which is just bananas. And what she doesn't say is like, oh, hell yeah, I'm in. Let's roll. What she says is, may it be with me as you say. Which that as a posture of prayer, like let it be with me as the divine wills. Like I want to tap into what's happening. I want to like move with the river as it's flowing, as opposed to spend all this time with my, hey God, will you please? All those are fine prayers. That's great. But none of them mean anything if I'm like constantly warring against the way things are moving, the way the divine is moving. I mean, some of this is like taps into like kind of old sort of Taoist understanding of spirituality, where like you let go and you just let the river carry you. I don't go all the way down that line because I think there's more agency in human life than just like picking your feet up off the ground and letting the river carry you. But there really is something to be said for like moving in the direction the river is flowing, as opposed to constantly literally hoping to God that like the plans I have set aside for my own mind will just work out and that God will get behind them. So may it be with me is more like, okay, if this is the direction you're moving, then I want to do that. So prayer begins with attention paying as opposed to like will crafting. I'm looking and paying attention. I'm listening and responding to what I'm seeing, as opposed to just in a closet by myself with my eyes closed, coming up with plans and then throwing them out into the wind and hoping that they work.
Yeah, that's powerful. I love that. Okay, so we're in the last third of our conversation today. I could talk with you all for forever, but I know we all have things to do, and we'll do this again at some point. So here's what I want to do. I don't even know if this is going to work out. This is just some random thought that came to me. We're going to play a little game, which is not really a game, but I am going to put you on the spot, both of you, and we'll see how you both seem like you do really well on the spot. You're both friggin' smart. So I'm going to. I've read through May It Be So. I've prayed through May It Be So. It's fantastic. It's helped me already as a human, as a husband, father, worker, neighbor, all of that stuff. I'm going to read a few of my favorites. And so again, this is the Let's Give a Damn podcast. There are so many people listening right now that want to they're part of this, I call it the damn good family, because they want to make a difference in the world. They want to be a difference in the world. They want to positively mold and shape their families, neighborhoods, cities, states, countries, world, whatever. And so these are people that really, and I get stories back all the time. I mean, I wish I could just open up my DM section, my texts, my emails to show you the kinds of stuff that people talk with me about and the things they're sharing, the things that they're doing. One lady the other day, she's in the middle of Indiana, and she DM'd me and said, "Your conversations have led me to start this nonprofit organization that there's no other nonprofit that's doing this kind of work in this part of Indiana. We're going to be the first ones." So it's weighty, the kinds of things that people are going through and the decisions they're making. So with those people in mind, I'm going to read a few of the prayers, and I want you to unpack that for us in 30, 45 seconds. Like, what does that mean? What does this prayer mean for the Let's Give a Damn family, for people who, again, may have a faith bent right now. They might adhere to some sort of faith. They might not. But based on all that we've talked about, what does this mean for them?
Do you want to do like you read and then Scott responds, then you read another one, and I respond? We kind of rotate that way.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with Scott, then go to Justin. We'll go 4 or 5, and then we'll move on. So Scott, you are first on prayer number 4. May I receive into my life and family anyone to whom I have given.
I just had a meditation on that this morning or yesterday, which is often in prayer we feel like I get interrupted all the time because like I got kids around, or I'm trying to go on a walk and there's somebody around, and what we're bumping up against is like that we think prayer is aloneness, but what if the actual presence of somebody else can be a conduit of the divine, and you're seeing and you're looking deeply into the people and presence around you, and maybe this is the invitation that you need to have so you're like, where's God in my life right now? It's like, here's all of these invitations around you, if you saw it as the doorway for that. So whoever is coming into your life today, we can have a stance that go, what am I being invited to know? What am I being invited to see through this person who is a doorway to the deeper conversation of existence?
Beautiful. You scored a 10 in my book. Justin.
It is a game.
May I never allow disappointment to lead me into despair, but always toward a more resilient and active hope.
You're going to fail more than you succeed in life. That's just true. You're just going to lose more battles than you win. And the longer you live, the more it just becomes evidently true. So it becomes an opportunity. Failure, falling down becomes an opportunity to get back up or get back up to either like step back into the stuff you're doing and lean harder into grace and figure out what your strengths actually are, as opposed to leaning on things you thought were your strengths. So you self-learn like, oh, that's not me anymore. Right? Where I thought this about myself and that's why I fell on my face. Or to get back up where it's like, this is stuff I feel like I should be doing and I blew it. And I realized that I don't have the strength in my own life, in my own self, and the resolve in my own self. So I need some people to go with me.
Beautiful. Scott, may I have the courage to follow meaning and significance wherever they lead.
This is a game, but really you're asking us to excavate our own lives right now in the moment,
bro.
Yes.
It's so real.
This is what it is. For me right now, this show, Say Yes, a lot of it is like me confronting my own narratives about turning being 40 in my 40s and going, I want to do something new. And in order to do something new, I must start where I'm at. And that might look embarrassing because of the culture of comparison. There are women and men my age who are fantastic and they've had 20 years to work on it. I've had 2 or 4, and so I'm starting where I'm at, and I have consciously set the bar low, not because I don't want dreams. Like I just accomplished when I performed at a comedy club, but I said, I don't know where this is going to take me. Like, I don't know how long this will last. I don't know where this is going to take me, but that could be the adventure that I want. Because as soon as I name what it needs to be, I've diminished what it possibly could be. And so I want to say, like, I'm going to follow the meaning of this, which is doing it and interacting with people wherever it's going to take me for however long. And I'm going to be okay with not saying this is where it will end up, but going, I'm going to be on the journey. The meaning and the significance is the actual doing with it. So that's how it excavates me today.
It's powerful. Super powerful. Justin, last one for you. May my initial posture towards strangers be kindness and curiosity rather than suspicion and fear.
I try to think of myself as like relatively politically savvy or culturally savvy as best I can, and that like I'm open to conversations, but I without question I find within myself there are like boundaries and borders on like the folks I'm willing to hear from and like pay honest close attention to. And I want that to change. That what is frightening to me is almost always because it's stuff I don't it's something about a culture or a person that I don't understand, and it's always that way, right? It's like what I don't understand scares me. And there also just isn't a place in my life I can look back like where I came to knowledge about another's culture or another's life that I wasn't richer for, and where I didn't have a kind of different and deeper sense of love for humanity because I figured out what it looks like for someone to live as transgender. I mean, I was a kid who grew up in a time when it's like people throw like horrible like sexual epithets at people just for fun. And then, like, not only did I have friends come out of the closet, I've had friends transition, and when I was honest about it at the time, I was like, I don't know what the hell to do with that. But these are people that like I then I emotionally kind of distanced myself from because I was freaked out by the whole thing. But over the course of, again, 20 years plus of being a pastor in a community in which they're gay, straight, transgender folks moving in, moving out, like, man, I want to be open to like, what does God look like in the shape of a transgender life? What's God look like in the shape of this hyper conservative like mindset? Like what's God look like over there? I want to live in more of that kind of posture. It's better. It's richer. It's more adventurous.
I love it. I love it. This book, everyone, is out right now. If you're listening to this on 9/24, go get it. The book Prayer, the one they wrote earlier this year. It's been a few months. It is already out, so you can get both of those together. They will help you in more ways than you currently know. So please get it. The artwork, the words, everything is super, super powerful. Scott, Justin, you two, I want you to hear this. You're doing very, very, I know you already know this. I hope you know this, but you're doing very important work. Life is really fucking hard. Life feels very heavy right now for me. And I'm a person who, if I'm being very honest, I don't understand the struggles that people have with anxiety, depression, and so on. I know, Scott, you shared in this conversation and others that we've had that you've had, deep bouts with that, right? I don't understand that. But as the older I get, the more people I get around, I have my own shit, and we can spend 73 podcast episodes on my shit. But I don't, those particular things, everything just feels very dark. And I'm not, as I process through all the things happening politically, societally, I don't know what to do with so much of it because I don't go to anxiety, depression, and different things, suicidal thoughts. That's not where I go. I go to different unhealthy places. I get very short with with my temper, with my wife and kids. I work too much. I, try to create more stuff to counteract all the shit that I see in the world. So I have my other unhealthy ways of doing that. But these books are so important because they help us slow down.
Yeah. They
help us pray and speak out meaningful words. And it just helps us form our day better. So really, really important work. Thank you both for joining us on this show. Again, I wish we could keep going, but I know we have stuff to do. We'll do it again at some point. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, man.
Love you, Nick. Thank you for the work you do in the world.
Well, there you have it, my friends. I hope you feel encouraged and challenged. If you have any questions for Justin or Scott, hit them up on Instagram at Justin McRoberts or at Scott the Painter. They're very active, and they're two of my favorite follows. So don't just go ask them a question, follow them. They're very good people. And as always, I'm at Nick Lapara or at Let's Give a Damn. If you want to chat, I am down for that. You can find links and more information about this podcast conversation and all things Let's Give a Damn by going to letsgiveadamn.com. If you love what we're doing on this show, please do something about it. Tell a friend, leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or consider giving us a few dollars each month to support the production of this show by going to patreon.com/letsgiveadamn right now. This podcast episode was created by Chad Snavely and yours truly. The intro and outro music is by our friend and podcast guest alum, Propaganda, also an amazing follow. Friend, go listen to his music. Next week, a conversation with my friend and the founder of Cycle Connect, Molly Burke. She's amazing. Don't miss it. I love you all. Peace.